So actually, the next session. So Torsten, we enjoyed it so much. We've got you back on again. And joining Torsten is Thomas Tesch, who's the managing director of PlanHorizon, and Doug, who you saw asking some questions earlier. Doug is our senior manager for outbound product management, and I think the guys are going to share now a kind of best practice session, really, on the different stages of an SPM journey and where the best practices will make the biggest impact for you. So over to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you very much. This is a nice screen here, very nice. Yeah, my name is Thomas Tesch. Thanks for the introduction. I'm happy that I have here Doug and Torsten, who already was talking to Michael, and I think some of the topics that were addressed by Torsten and Michael, we will look a bit deeper and dive into it a bit and discuss in the next 20 minutes best practices around SPM introduction, and also a bit look into what we have learned from the field. And I think this could be very interesting here for the audience. And we selected 3 topics we want to dive into a bit. First one is what we already heard about. What is the typical SPM journey? So on which maturity level you start your SPM journey, and how does it affect your journey, right? Michael talked about that it's a multi-year thing, but we will also look at situations where we, and this is the good news, can have very fast PPM and SPM introductions, which is also possible. Yeah. So we will look a bit in this spectrum of the journey topic, let's say. Second topic we would like to address is a bit look into best practices from the field in how you tailor your SPM solutions. ServiceNow is a great platform. It's very flexible. It comes with very, very good out-of-the-box functionality, but you can tailor it to your needs. You can adapt it to your processes, to your organization. You all know that. And we want to look what works very well, what we have learned from that, and whether there's a conflict with out-of-the-box or whether this is really complementary. And I think this is also very interesting. And third topic, we just have 20 minutes. Third topic, as we said, ServiceNow is a platform, and SPM is not an isolated thing. There are many things around it, many processes around it, many things on the platform and in your organization around it. And we want to look a bit at what are the typical synergies from using a platform, other modules, the app engine, and stuff like that. The third topic we want to talk about. Let's start with the first topic. I introduced it already a bit. So customer journeys and maturity levels. We know each company that we talk to, where we engage in a project, they start somehow on a different level, right? And we heard about today about strategies, and from strategy to execution. But sometimes for many organizations, this is already very advanced and they find themselves on a more basic state. And the question is what can you achieve from a basic state? From where can you go, right? And important here is to look at the processes in your organization and also at the tool, and also always consider this as a package that you have to improve, right? Not isolated the tool or the processes. And let's hear Torsten and Doug on their thoughts on these topics. Maybe, Doug, you want to start because we heard Torsten before.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Thank you. So the first thing you'll notice, I'm pretty old. I've got this gray beard here. So when I first started in this space, maturity was a lot easier. It was how mature are your PPM practices, and people were trying to do better portfolio management. They were doing efficient frontier calculations. The world has become a lot more complex now as people started integrating agile methodologies from planning and execution into their organizations. Maturities look very different. They can be across different planning types. So for us, it's about working with customers, trying to find out what their journey is, how they're trying to mature across these different areas. And I think the benefit for them, the thing that customers like is, regardless of what that journey looks like, it doesn't have to mean different platforms, different solutions to support them. Whether they're in one part of the organization, they're trying to improve on project delivery that might come from, let's say, an IT organization who's implementing new software for the business, or if it's more of a product approach that Karina referred to in the roadmap session, and they're doing that with more of an agile approach. They can do all that on the platform and actually relate those to each other, because very often those pieces of work are related to each other.
Yeah, just to join in, I think what was quite important, we see in our implementation project, we see a lot of different customers, and it's really, there's not one roadmap for everyone. I mean, we have seen some smaller customers and they say, okay, we are starting at a plain level and we want to go fast. So we don't introduce a lot of functionality, but we want to get the basics right. And let's do a very quick project, because in the past we failed very often. And so let's do a 2-month implementation, and then we have at least transparency in our organization. And that works very well. So we have even standardized plans for that. But that doesn't work in a large and heterogeneous organization. That's something you have to be aware of. I think what's quite important in all of the projects is to communicate it upfront. Yeah, and that's why roadmaps become so important. Yeah, because if you know you have different needs in your organization, it's quite difficult to fill all needs at once. So we have seen at Aldi, it's a large organization, and it's not a good idea to move in parallel with all these organizations, because you have to do change management. You have to make sure that people adopt, people learn along the journey very much. And so what is quite important is to say, okay, what do we do first? So very often customers start to get their demand management right, yeah, to get project governance right. And then you can leverage that and go into different directions. But the reason why it's important to communicate that is you will have really different stakeholder groups who will approach you. If you're the platform owner or process manager, people will come to you and say, okay, what about my area? And then it's quite good to say, okay, we have planned that, but let's go step by step. I think that's.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would add to that is you see customers who are very successful in getting a lot of value, and that's not necessarily related to the path that they take. It's how well they execute on that path. And I think the conversation that you had with Aldi kind of shows that there's customers who are taking different approaches, and sometimes we tend to think that one approach is more right than another, or someone is using an approach that's maybe dated. But I think there are customers who are trying to do very new things and they're not doing them very well, and there are customers who are doing more traditional things and doing them very well. So I think the execution on the plan and working with the teams, building those that buy-in from the team, and also those dependencies between the different pieces, execution is really important, and that's exciting when you see customers getting value out of what they're doing.
Yeah. There's last aspect I want to mention, what really leads to very different journeys. It's really the existing landscape. Yeah, we also heard that at Aldi, we hear it everywhere. It's no matter if it's ServiceNow and Jira, or you have different project management tools, etc. There are different ways to deal with that. You can integrate, you can really try to get everyone on one platform, etc. But that's also, you need a clear communication on that, because we sometimes see customers who really have not a consistent view on that. Yeah, you have different parties and they're fighting against each other, and that really will impede your progress, your execution. And that's something you have to discuss it openly, but you have to get to a decision. And our project's always very important for us to have a decision maker, not all because we always only want to talk with higher level management. We also want to get the execution level right, but we want to have some guidelines on that. Where do you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, regarding your solution landscape, your architecture, because that's quite important for all the people.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the second topic, best practices for tailoring SPM solutions. Thorsten.
Yeah, so I will lead you through the discussion this time, and you know that when you introduce ServiceNow SPM, you get a lot of out-of-the-box configurations, processes that are already there, and then people always wonder what is a good practice, what is a bad practice, where may I configure, what is customization, and yeah, every organization is a bit different. Of course, you need different permission models, for example, in different organizations. Yeah, you need you have different reporting, you have approval processes, and so let's look at what is good practice, what is best practice, how does ServiceNow support tailoring your solution, and where you may adapt the solution and what you better not should adapt and what you should do when configuring the solution the first time. Yeah. So maybe Thomas, you can.
Yeah, this is. I think this is a very important question. The ServiceNow platform, as I think many on this webinar today will understand, is very flexible and very powerful. That makes it really important for customers to have discussions around how they want to use the platform. And I would go so far as to say it's important for them to have what I call guiding principles, and include guiding principles around configuration, so that everyone who's on the team and everyone who's on a steering committee around how they're going to use the entire platform, not just strategic portfolio management, to understand when and how they should use configuration. One thing that I've seen customers do with a lot of success is to have a principle around using out of the box where possible. And that creates a discussion around, hey, should we just go and configure this? The fact that we can the answer is absolutely yes. The question on should we, in very often the answer is not really. An example that I've seen before is where an organization will, for large organizations like Aldi and others, there are many different ways that people are doing risk in the organization. So they'll spend a lot of time doing an analysis of all those, and they'll come up with a combined data model on what risk should be and how it should be managed. And then we show them what we do out of the box, and they're like, oh, we could have just as easily have gone to that, but they just made I wouldn't even say it was a decision. They just instead, without really considering looking at out of the box first, they just came up with their own data model. And then, of course, the impact of that is down the line, they might not be able to use out of the box status reporting. And as we upgrade and we deliver new features, as you saw on the roadmap, that creates challenges for customers. So yeah, it's definitely an important thing that needs to be discussed.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what Doug is saying. And we often see this when we come to the customer and we have the initial workshops. We get the message, we want to do it out of the box. Yeah, and we say, yeah, out of the box is great. Then we show it and demonstrate it. And of course, there's some common agreement on what is the demand process. But then if you look into it with the customers, then you often get feedback, yeah, here we have this special approval, and here we have to limit the access rights and so on. Yeah, and not everything what you change to the out of the box is bad. There are many good and useful configurations that you can do and that are perfectly supported. And in my view, if you do them, you are still out of the box, as long as you use the demand process as a demand process and respect the skeletons that has been provided by ServiceNow. Do not damage them. That is very important. Yeah. So there's a lot of confusion around this topic sometimes. What does it mean when you say out of the box? And I think we could have an own full day workshop on that just to discuss this topic. Yeah. But important, and I think this is the key point, setting up development guidelines, governance guidelines to make sure that you change your platform in a reasonable, good practice way. So not over-configuring, using the tool set that is there and not changing it in a bad way. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe one other thing I'll add to that is it's important that as you're having those discussions around configuration, that you consider our product roadmap. And that's why I was so happy that Karina was presenting here today, because very often it's a very different discussion to say, hey, we know Karina and her team are going to be delivering us functionality in 1 or 2 releases. So either we're going to wait for that or we're going to do something, but we know it's going to be temporary. Having that kind of discussion, is this something we're going to need long-term? Is this something that ServiceNow is building that we will use temporary? that has very different impact on where you go from a product perspective. So for us, it's important that the customers understand where we're going with the product, and that helps them to develop those internal roadmaps that you had talked about, that you guys do such a good job with your clients on. And I apologize, my camera's frozen. Probably better to look at a still picture of me than a live one anyways, but apologies for that.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to add regarding customization, etc. So I fully agree with you. So it's always better building on top, because you have self-service capabilities, etc. You can extend in many directions, but not changing the core, because, as you said, you're providing new features, and you have a certain vision of where things are going. And if you build it in a completely different way, then you cannot benefit from these extensions you get. Yeah. And the other thing I very often see is that you should get master data right, because a lot of your functionality uses master data, like business unit strategies. If you can't define your business unit, it's hard to use business unit strategies, for example. Yeah. I think that's something you see very often. That's where some companies really struggle, and that's sometimes SPM is introduced quite late in the process, and then you have already set up everything, and then you have to get your master data right. Okay, I think we should move over.
We move on to the third topic. Doug, would you like to introduce it?
Absolutely, and this is a related topic. So we talked about the power of the platform. If we think about that in a larger context of an organization, there can very often be powerful synergies between what customers are doing with strategic portfolio management, formerly IT business management, and what they're doing today, or what they're planning to do with the platform. And obviously, I'm really interested on your take on that. When, even for me, that works for ServiceNow, sometimes it can be daunting to understand all the things that you can do with the platform and how that's evolving so quickly.
Yeah, sure. I think this is a very interesting question. And if you look at ServiceNow, the key thing that we have in the platform is a task. A task defines some work to be done. So just looking from this very high level perspective, we can consider it as a platform to manage all your work. All your work that you do in your enterprise, in the end, can be managed in ServiceNow. Of course, this work happens in various contexts from various perspectives. And for some of them, you're better using SPM functionality. For others, you're better off using other modules, for example, like customer service management or others. And I think you have to look at the platform and use the capabilities of the platform, and looking at this work paradigm to see how you can connect things best, and how you can, depending on the industry you're working and the customer processes you find, how best these modules can interact. And this is a big plus, that SPM is not an isolated standalone thing, but we have the platform, typical integrations in IT with ITSM processes, but also we look here at PlanHorizon at advanced processes. Also ServiceNow is looking into that, for example, clinical trial management in the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, there you have aspects of customer service management, getting information from studies from patients. At the same time, you run research projects on the platform. You want to connect things, you want to integrate data. And for these bigger use cases, you have great synergy effects by using one platform where you integrate the stuff.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is the synergies don't become obvious at the beginning very often. So there are some customers who really strategically approach that. Where one customer, they are doing everything by the book. They are very focused on CSDM. They understand that very much. But many customers, you start somewhere, and it takes time to understand what does it mean. You have a platform, and you have platform effects. But it's important, over time you will realize that, for example, if you look at the CSDM, that connects really project management, application management, it connects operations like incidents, problems, changes. You can relate everything to each other. And when you start, you won't recognize it maybe, but over time your data continues to grow. And then you see, okay, we can make use of this data at this place. Yeah. And that's quite interesting. And you have it in IT, but you have it also in other areas. And if you're using ServiceNow for business project management, it's like you're you are introducing new products via a project, and then you have assets at your customer base, and then you do customer service management and field service management. And then it's very important to have one system where all the data that you collected along these processes is integrated, because you can build numerous use cases on top of it. You can understand, okay, now we have a customer service issue. To which project does it relate to, etc. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and you learn it over time how the platform helps you to have these overarching use cases.
Exactly. I think there are many more use cases like that. But I also think we are a bit at the end of our time here in this interesting panel discussion, which I enjoyed very much, and which was an honor for us that we could participate here. We appreciate that. And thank you. And I give back to Patrick.